Hello, this is Collectibles coming at you with a first ever reveal face cam. So hi, nice to meet you everyone, and thank you for all the new subscribers who visited my channel. Very nice to see you, and for those that are here for the first time or haven't subscribed yet, if you could please like and subscribe, that'd be super great. So I'm coming at you here today with a face reveal so you all can kind of see the sadness on my face because I have indeed sold my Rolex Pepsi on Jubilee. It was a very sad day. I'm kind of mourning the loss of that watch still. However, I'm pretty confident in my decision as I acquired this Rolex Submariner, the LV Starbucks instead, as well as put some more money towards Pokémon. So I'd like to kind of walk you through the journey of how I got the Rolex, why I decided to sell the Pepsi, and what I'm going to do going forward, or already have done in this process. So it all goes back to a while ago when I started lusting over watches, like many of you I'm sure viewing have, where we become obsessed with watches. We're watching tons of YouTube videos. We're, scouring the internet, every new release from Rolex or other brands as well. We're kind of hyping it up and just going from watch to watch, obsessed. So I went through that phase until I kind of narrowed down exactly which watch I wanted. I wanted the Rolex GMT. I wanted either kind of the Batgirl or the Pepsi, specifically on Jubilee, because I really liked the Jubilee. Everyone said it was so comfortable. It was so iconic. It dressed up the watch. It made it look kind of flashy and formal. And I loved that, mixed with the sporting kind of look of the GMT, the functionality, the history of the Rolex GMT in general, in terms of it being kind of the most iconic, the first, and really an unmatched GMT for that price point in the sports watch world. So I then had kind of a big victory at work where I took home, a bit of money that I could put to the side to save up for my Rolex, GMT. So I started going to my AD, the closest AD to me. I also had a kind of personal relationship with this AD. We had a friend in common, essentially. So I was hoping to kind of get a leg up on some of the other people in the wait list and, have a better shot at a GMT. However, about a year had passed and I hadn't really had any success with the GMT. My AD and I, it seemed like he'd respond super quick if I were asking questions about, a Tag Heuer versus, following up about my Rolex. So I decided, maybe this isn't for me, and I went to the gray market. Once I had that success at work to where, okay, I'm now ready even to go on the gray market to afford this watch, and that's what I did. And I made the final decision to go with the Rolex Pepsi. I think its history is unmatched. I think, its iconicism was huge. I think its history with Pan Am and the color scheme of it being so bold and flashy and kind of hype. I know some of us hate that word, but I'm a slave to hype as well. Definitely a victim to it at times. So I picked up the Rolex Pepsi on Jubilee on the gray market. I found a super reputable dealer, very well known in the watch community, and shipped it to me overnight. I got it, I opened it, I'm like, wow, all this money for this steel watch. It kind of felt like, whoa, what did I just do? But as I kept wearing it, I went on a super hardcore honeymoon phase with it. I never wanted to take it off, and it was just kind of my go-to watch. And I went straight from basically Seikos and Casios and Citizens straight into that watch. So I didn't have the natural progression that a watch collector usually does, where they go from Cartier to something like Omega and, insert other kind of mid-tier brand, Tag Heuer, Oris, kind of all these brands before you get to Rolex. I kind of just jumped straight into what, I thought was my grail at the time. And it really was my grail. It still is in a way. However, I started to notice some things I did not like about the Rolex Pepsi that I thought I would love or not bother me. One was the bracelet. The Jubilee bracelet is by far the most comfortable watch I've ever worn. However, it's so polished, and even though the Jubilee, the actual links of it hide a lot of the scratches, the clasp shows everything. and you just have a lot of swirly scratches. And again, that didn't bother me a ton, but it was, you know, if you're going to make a pro-con list, it was in the con department. In addition to that, the bezel I didn't find fun to, you know, kind of fidget or play with. I know it's a small nitpick, but that was one that I had that's kind of important to me. The GMT function, I hardly ever used it. I thought I'd use it a lot more with work or with relatives or in travel, but the place I traveled, I went to Hawaii with my family, and 3 hours difference, I didn't really need the Rolex for that. I could do that easily in my head. I think if I went to Europe or somewhere where the time difference is like 10 plus hours, 8 plus hours, I think that would be a lot cooler. However, like, I don't know. I'm not going there that often, maybe once every few years. And even when I do, like, I'm taking trains, I'm, you know, walking in the cities a lot. Am I really going to bring my Pepsi? I started really thinking about that, especially with how much money I had parked into the Pepsi. So I then also started noticing that I was wearing the Pepsi less and less because of the Jubilee bracelet, the shininess, and the cost value. I also thought the bracelet was a little dainty and it felt uncomfortable wearing, like, not physically uncomfortable, but for me, kind of mentally uncomfortable, like doing yard work or doing cleaning the cars or swimming with my kids because they're kind of rough and you're sometimes banging your wrist into, you know, the side of the jacuzzi and the rough pavement, etc. So I kind of wanted this kind of sporty watch, but it was kind of becoming this huge grail that, you know, was 99% of my collection's value. Even as I started to pick up new pieces, it still was so disproportionately priced. So I was wearing it less and less, and then I picked up the Blue Lagoon from my authorized dealer. So this is kind of where it all started to unravel for my relationship with my Rolex Pepsi. I picked up the Blue Lagoon, and I went to a new authorized dealer. So the prior one that I kind of had this friendship relationship with-ish, kind of started not always responding right away, and I felt like there wasn't going to be movement on that end. I even reached out to him about the Blue Lagoon and kind of got like, yeah, if you want to come try it on, but not much personalization or anything, which is fair. I mean, I hadn't bought a watch from him yet. So I tried out a new AD that was like, yeah, come on in. And although they didn't have one, they allowed me to kind of put a down payment. And yeah, I got it within a month. So this brand new, pretty hyped up Tudor, but still very hyped up, the Blue Lagoon, I received it in less than a month. Even though I had to prepay for it, that's still, I mean, in the watch world, we'd consider that pretty lucky as a buyer. So from then, I started to fall in love with the Blue Lagoon. I think it kind of did everything I wanted. It had great proportions. It was a little smaller than the Rolex Pepsi. It was just as flashy. It was a very cool summer watch. And it was on a Jubilee bracelet. And I would say that Tudor Jubilee bracelet is very similar to the Rolex one. Of course, if you don't know, Tudor and Rolex are related, kind of the same owner between each one. So, or the same corporation owns both. So yeah, very similar bracelet and for a heck of a lot less. So although I'd give the edge to the Rolex, so please be nice in the comments. I'm not comparing the two or saying, you know, Rolex is worse than Tudor. But for that bracelet in particular, they're very close. Especially because the Rolex Pepsi I bought was a 2018 model. So this was by far not a new, watch. It's 7 years old at the time I sold it. So that's the other thing. I did buy it from a reputable, gray market dealer. However, in the back of my mind, something always kind of ticked about, is this legit? Is this, was something happening to this? I mean, there was no record of it. I had it, links taken out, and I had it cleaned at Rolex with my AD, and there, never any suspicion. It had been serviced, and it, passed service before I bought it, so the warranty was extended. So it had passed multiple checks, but in the back of my mind, it just never really sat right. So all those things considered, plus I picked up this Blue Lagoon. I was kind of starting to say, hey, this Blue Lagoon and this Pepsi are serving very similar roles. They're both flashy sport watches that have almost the exact same looking bracelet. So I stopped wearing the Pepsi as much. I was wearing the Blue Lagoon way more. I was wearing some of my dress watches way more. I just wasn't picking it up as much. When I did, it was a special occasion, or it was, to kind of go out and be a baller because, think what you may, the Rolex Pepsi, with how iconic it is, you really could walk into any room you wanted and truly think to yourself, hey, I've got the best watch here. I don't care if he's got a gold Vacheron or AP or something like that. Like you could tell yourself you have the best watch for the value, for the history, for the complication. You could really tell yourself that and not be wrong in a lot of watch collecting circles. Let me know in the comments if you disagree with that. But when I put the Pepsi on, it gave kind of a baller, I'm the daddy mentality. So as cringe as that was to say, it is true. That's how I felt. However, it just wasn't doing the same things it did for me when I first picked it up as my first luxury watch. And then 2 months later, I got the call for this. So my new AD, who sold me the Blue Lagoon, in only 2 months after that, so 3 months total, talking to this AD, offered me a Rolex Submariner LV, the Starbucks. Wow, it was unbelievable. I thought I was getting a call from my doctor, but it was her using the company line instead of her kind of work phone, so I didn't have the number saved. And she's like, hey, this is the call. And I'm like, what do you mean this is the call? And she's like, you're getting a Rolex. And it was insane. I definitely wanted this watch. I always loved this watch, kind of back to my childhood where I was like 10 or probably 10 years old in a foreign country, and I bought one of these, didn't know it was fake, and didn't really know anything about Rolex. I just loved the look. It looked iconic. And yeah, it was this watch. So, or it was the Hulk. I'm not sure. I can't remember that far, unfortunately. But yes, it's always kind of had a part of my heart, and I love dive watches, especially sport watches. So I decided to pick it up. Now, a lot of you may say, well, why not sell that one? Why not sell that instead of the Pepsi? Well, the Pepsi I had a lot more money into. And for the negatives, I said, mainly being that I was always kind of bothered by having bought it gray, and that it was an older watch. It was 2018 model, whereas this is, 5 days old at the time of this recording. So that was really cool. And I'm the first owner. I know it's 100% legit, and it's under warranty for years. So, and I didn't want to see in the future that possibly upset my AD if she found out. I know it shouldn't matter and you should buy the watches you want, but I truly did want this watch, and oh my God, 2 watches in 3 months. I can't even imagine over 10 years what my relationship with this AD might be if she stays there long enough. I guess that's my fear there. But, at least I have store history, and she seems great. I think we hit it off. So we have some similar interests in kind of vintage looking models as well. So yeah, I'm going to roll with this one. The Pepsi, I was able to sell back to the same gray market dealer who sold it to me for the exact same price I bought it for, which is also still fair market value. He paid for the label. I one day shipped it back. It was the smoothest transaction I've ever had. And he wired me the money same day. And I know it's in a good home, and it's going to go to a good home. Although I'll miss kind of some of those memories and the milestone, it being my first Rolex. My daughter was born while I was wearing that. I know that's super sad to kind of get rid of it knowing that. But I have pictures from that moment, and I really do cherish it. And maybe the, Pepsi will come back in my life, but from the AD. And then I could kind of stomach the amount of investment I put into it, etc. And finally, the last reason I chose to sell that one over this watch, or in general just chose to sell it instead of trying to keep both at all costs, are, I guess, twofold. One, I couldn't justify having all three. I couldn't justify the Blue Lagoon, the Starbucks, and the Pepsi. And I wasn't going to get rid of the Blue Lagoon because, in my opinion, I was liking it more and more, probably than both of these Rolexes, to be honest. But it doesn't have the same kind of cool kind of flex, power, confidence that when you put it on that a Rolex does. But the other reason is that a few months ago, I decided to kind of go all in on Pokemon. I don't know if you can see behind me or in some of my other videos, but I'm a huge Pokemon collector. I love the cards, games, anime, etc., but especially the card game. I have a huge collection that I started, as a kid, but back in like 2018 especially, I started getting back into it. And as the values have increased, I've kind of become more and more confident. As it boomed in COVID, it dipped a little and then it boomed again. And it's kind of continued booming over the last year. So I decided to put a very large chunk of money back into Pokemon and kind of reinvest. And for collection's sake, not just investable. But I bought things that I always wanted, kind of dream cards, and I'm going to sit on it. And I tried to buy duplicates of things and 2 copies of certain cards I really liked and believed in so that I could sell one to fund the other, down the line when things hopefully appreciate. So my Rolex AD called me a few weeks after I made that decision and had put a very large investment into Pokemon. So could not have been worse timing financially. Although I could have afforded to do everything kind of at once, it was just too much. I couldn't justify that much in watches, especially with 3 incredibly similarly functioning watches. And I couldn't justify, selling off Pokemon when my whole thing is, well, these are performing way better than watches. They're also kind of my biggest hobby. I mean, watches are certainly right there, especially as I age. Watches become more and more, personal and valuable. But Pokemon will always kind of be right up there with it. So that's why I chose to sell the Pepsi. It was money back right away. Even though I think probably a bad investment idea. I think had I waited closer to April when the new watches get released, I think there'll be new hype and buzz surrounding, is the Pepsi going to get, discontinued, etc., and create kind of, a false kind of price increase. But also, that watch is just iconic and it's very cool. But again, at my entry point into that watch, it was time to let it go. And if it goes way up in value, that's okay. I'm just going to collect what I like, and which includes this watch with the coolest dive bezel clickiness I've ever heard, and super usable too. When your hands are wet, you can actually use it, and it's super functional. Also the brushed bracelet, and I'll go over this more in one of my when I've had this watch a little longer and can do a proper review video. But yeah, the bracelet on the Starbucks is just way more solid. It's brushed. You just feel kind of like it's a tank, and that you're way less afraid of scratching it or doing other things like I personally was with the Jubilee bracelet. So really no regrets. I am mourning the loss of the Pepsi. I am sad. But if it's meant to be, it'll come back in my life. And right now I'm ready to create new memories with the Starbucks, and some of these Pokemon cards. So, happy collecting to you all. I hope you have a great night. And again, if you could please like and subscribe. If you've made it this far, holy heck, please stick around the channel. And hopefully I'll keep bringing you some entertaining content as we go forward. So thank you all and have a great night.